Sawate ladies. So this next video is on chapter 33 of Wheelock, and this covers conditions, okay? It's a fairly short and straightforward video, so huzzah. And so let's talk about conditions. Conditions are if sentences, okay? So they have two clauses. They have the if clause and they have the conclusion clause, okay? The if clause is called the protasis. The conclusion clause is called the apodosis. And I want you to know those terms so that it's easier for me to talk to you about conditions if you know protasis and apodosis. The protasis in a condition sentence is introduced by one of three conjunctions: si, which means if; nisi, which is a negative if, right? If something does not happen, so on and so forth. You can also translate nisi unless or except, or etsi, which means even if. Now, si and nisi have one little special aspect to them, which is that if you want to be able to say if someone or if anyone or if something or if anything, you would use si aliquis. However, after the four conjunctions si, nisi, num, and ne, the ali drops off. Okay, so if you want to say if someone, you don't say si aliquis, you just say si quis. Okay, so if anyone, si quis. An easy way to remember this is that after si, nisi, num, and ne, all the alis run away. So there you go, a little rhyme to help you remember. There are 6 types of conditions. There are 3 that use the indicative mood and 3 that use the subjunctive mood, okay? The conditions that use the indicative mood indicate things that did happen, are happening, or will most likely happen, okay? As opposed to the subjunctive conditions, the 3 conditions that use the subjunctive mood, which indicate things that did not happen, are not happening, or will most likely not happen, okay? So we're going to start with the indicative conditions. There's the present simple fact, and that's where you use the present indicative in both of the clauses, in both the protasis and the apodosis. And it's a simple fact in the present. Si celeriter curris, leonem vitas. If you run quickly, you avoid the lion. Good advice. A past simple fact just tells you something that did happen in the past, right? And you just need a past tense, either the imperfect, perfect, or pluperfect in the indicative. So the example I give you, si celeriter cucuristi leonem vitavisti. Okay, so if you ran quickly, you avoided the lion. Okay? You can't have a future simple fact, right? Because a fact is something that has been done. It's a deed, right? In the future. It hasn't happened yet. So we don't call it the future simple fact. We call it the future more vivid, meaning that it's more likely to happen because you have this indicative mood for your verbs in both the protasis and the apodosis. So you need the future or the future perfect indicative. And one little hint to make this sound good in English: in the protasis, the future verb often translates as a present. So, for example, si celeriter curres, leonem vitapes. So if you run quickly, you will avoid the lion. Okay. Notice that curres, of course, is future. But it sounds better to translate it as a present when you're translating the future more vivid. If you run quickly, you will avoid the lion, as opposed to if you will run quickly, you will avoid the lion. So either way is technically correct. It just sounds better when you translate the future verb in the protasis as a present. Now, that leads us to our subjunctive conditions. And these are conditions that are not happening, but they could, right? They're more potential than actual fact. So we have the present contrary to fact, which uses the imperfect subjunctive in both clauses, okay? And it translates as were blanking in the protasis clause and would blank in the apodosis. So for example, si celeriter curreres, leonem vitares. Okay, so if you were running quickly, you would avoid the lion. But the implication here is that you didn't, and that you are not, and therefore you are not avoiding the lion. The past contrary to fact uses a pluperfect subjunctive in both of the protasis and the apodosis, and it translates as had blanked in the protasis and would have blanked in the apodosis. So, example, si celeriter cucurisses, leonem vitavisses. So if you had run quickly, you would have avoided the lion, but you didn't. So you didn't, contrary to fact. The future less vivid is the opposite of the future more vivid. So this is something that is less likely to happen in the future as opposed to the indicative, which is something that is more likely. Now, remember, the future mood, the subjunctive mood does not have a future tense, right? There's no future subjunctive. So you have to use the present subjunctive in both of these. The protasis will translate as should blank, the apodosis as would blank, okay? So for example, si celeriter curas, leonem vites. So if you should run quickly, you would avoid the lion. And again, the implication here is that you're not going to, and therefore it's not going to happen. So it's a less likely future than the future more vivid, which is an indicative condition. All right, ladies, come in tomorrow with your questions, and I hope you have a good night.